Good morning, Alamance Presbyterian Church. It's your Associate Pastor Jess, and I hope that you're well on this Wednesday morning. I wanted to talk this week about something that might be a spiritual practice for some of you, might not be a spiritual practice for many of you. Some of you might have never considered it as a spiritual practice at all, and all of those things are okay. But I wanted to present it as a potential spiritual practice if you're interested in engaging it. But if you just want to do it as something that's fun, that's fine too. And what I'm talking about is watching movies. Many of you know I love movies, and I love movies for the same reason that I love books. I love thoughtful and engaging narratives. This is also the same reason why I love scripture. I like stories that engage me and that involve me and that make me think and laugh and feel, stories that help me to learn things about myself and the world around me. And films can do that just as well as books can. And so today I wanted to recommend a couple of films to you, and all of these films are comedies. And the reason why I picked comedies is because I've been noticing in my own media consumption over the past several months that when I watch things, be they films or television programs or just the news, when I watch things that promote fear or that promote negativity, I start to become anxious and negative. And so I wanted to recommend some comedies, not because I want to make light of this situation, not because I want to distract you from the realities of what's going on in the world, but because comedies are a great reminder of the joy that's present in our world if we find it, if we seek it out, if we see it. And again, that's not to take away from the very real suffering that's happening. It's just to invite you to try on a different lens, even if it's just for a few hours, so that you can be reminded of what makes life beautiful and meaningful and rich. And so the comedies that I'm going to recommend to you are some of my favorite movies, and they're actually all family friendly. 2 of them are rated PG and 2 of them are rated PG-13. So they're a little older family. But I hope that you'll maybe consider watching these. Some of you have probably seen them already, and 2 are available on streaming services, on Netflix and on Showtime, on Prime and on Showtime. And the other 2, if you are so moved by this video that you want to borrow them, I will make them available to you. You have to give them back, but I will let you borrow my films. So without further ado, let's get into my recommendations. The first movie I'm going to recommend is one of my very, very favorites. It just makes me happy just thinking about this movie, and that is the 1989 classic Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Some of you are thinking, Jess, are you for real right now? This movie is super dumb. And you know what? You wouldn't be wrong, but this super dumb movie makes me laugh every time I watch it. It's just delightful. And in spite of the fact that it's really silly, it also has some really wonderful truths in it about what happens when we underestimate ourselves, what happens when we underestimate others, how we should always sort of be willing to be surprised, and also some really great lessons about the value of history. A lot of us don't think history matters, and it does. And this film is a really great example of that. It's about 2 boys in Southern California who are really not academic at all. They're just sort of skating by, and they are told that if they don't do a very excellent job on their history report, they will fail out of high school. And one of them will be sent to a reform school in Alaska. And so with the help of a mysterious stranger named Rufus, played by the wonderful George Carlin, they figure out a way to present a history report for the books. And hilarity ensues. This movie is just so delightful and so silly. It does have a little bit of language in it, but generally, you can't go wrong with my boys Bill and Ted. Not Bogus Journey, by the way. Excellent Adventure. That's the one you want. So check this one out. The next movie that I'm going to recommend is actually my favorite movie ever. It's tied with another film that I might talk about another day. But I wrote my college entrance essays on how this movie changed my life. And I got into every college that I applied to. I couldn't come up with anything else to write about that I felt really deeply passionate about, except for this movie. And this is going to be so silly, and that's okay. And that is the great and wonderful movie Clue. Clue speaks to everything I love about films. It's a murder mystery, but it's also a comedy. It incorporates some of my favorite actors and comedians like Madeline Kahn and Tim Curry, and Michael McKean is in it, and Christopher Lloyd is in it, and it's, oh gosh, Eileen Brennan. It's so funny. It's so well done. It has some wonderful alternative endings that are really fun, and it has some allusions to sort of naughtier adult things, but it's really a pretty safe comedy to watch with your kids, and it's just delightfully funny. I have seen this movie well over 50 times, and it still makes me laugh out loud in parts, and I'm still noticing really subtle, funny things that John Landis, who wrote this, he also wrote Animal House and An American Werewolf in London. Some of the things that he does in this film are just exquisitely brilliant and very subtle. So if you need a great movie to watch with your family one night, Clue is fantastic, and it's available, I think, on Prime right now if you want to watch Clue. So this is a good one. The next movie I want to recommend isn't one that I actually own a physical copy of, so you'll have to look it up, but it's on Showtime, so if you subscribe to Showtime through Prime, you can access it there, and it's a movie starring Steve Carell called Dan in Real Life, and Dan in Real Life is so funny. It's about a widower who's raising 3 daughters, and he feels pretty lonely, and he meets someone when he goes to this event that his family is having, a vacation event, and he thinks that this person is the one, only to discover that she's linked to someone else in his family. And you'll have to watch the film to understand all that, but it's brilliant, it's funny, it's not only funny, it's not only humor, but there's also some real wonderful reflections in there about grief, about parenting, about letting go. It features one of my favorite lines in cinema history, which is, "You are a murderer of love," which you need to watch the film to understand why that's funny. But I highly, highly recommend Dan in Real Life. It's really cute, moving, hilarious little picture. And that, as I said, is also on streaming. And then the last movie I want to recommend, and I think Dan in Real Life is rated PG-13. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway. The last movie I want to recommend is PG-13 as well, and Clue is rated PG, just so you know. But this last film does have an extramarital affair in it, but it's really delightful. In spite of that. And so the last film I want to recommend is Adrienne Shelly's 2007 film Waitress. And some of you may have heard of this because it was actually turned into a Broadway play, a very successful Broadway play, the music of which was penned by Sarah Bareilles. So if you're a Sarah Bareilles fan, you might like Waitress, though she doesn't have anything to do with the movie. But what it's about is this woman who's a waitress, and she wants to open her own restaurant, and her specialty is pie. She makes every kind of pie there is, and she goes into her imagination to make these pies, and she's really creative and really wonderful, and she's in this dead-end marriage, and she ends up getting pregnant, and so it's sort of her narrative about how she's going to become a mother, and if that's something she wants to do, and in the process, she falls in love with her doctor, and hilarity ensues. And so I don't think I'm doing this justice in terms of describing just how smart and funny it is. Our boy Andy Griffith is in this film. He plays a crotchety diner patron. So if you like Andy Griffith, you might check out Waitress. But this is one of my favorite films ever. I quote this around the office all the time, and no one knows what I'm talking about. So if you ever hear me say, "Yes, yes, yes," that's from this movie. And if you want to know what that's in reference to, you'll have to watch Waitress. So anyway, kind of silly, I know. Probably not something you consider a spiritual practice. I know that too. But I think that injecting levity and light into our day, into our week, especially in a time where we can be so easily consumed with anxiety and just overwhelmed in general. We don't know how to take breaks or how to take Sabbaths in the same way that we've done that before, or we're trying to figure out how to do that because we've never done it before and suddenly we realize we need those Sabbaths. Sometimes movie watching is really great. It doesn't have to be a way that you turn off your brain. It can be a way that you really think about the world in a different way, that you allow yourself space and time for laughter and for fun and for imagination and creativity. And so I would encourage you to take some time this week. Maybe you don't watch those movies. Maybe you watch one and you think, gosh, Jess, that was not funny at all. I do not agree with your opinion. And you know what? That's fine. Share some movies that you love that make you laugh with me. I would love those recommendations, especially if they're streaming or if you would let me borrow them, and then we can talk about them. But anyway, I just wanted to insert a little bit of laughter into your day and your week to let you know that I love you, that I'm thinking about you, that I'm laughing alongside with you as well as weeping alongside of you, and that God is doing that too. God is present in all of this. So on that happy note, that joyful note that God is with us, I say adieu for this week. I will see you next week, church, and until then, stay safe and say well. Bye.